My name is Yassin Hall, and this is who I am. I was born in 1970 on the island of St. Thomas to Miss Vernie Simmons and Mr. Victor Hall, both now deceased. My birth was a little odd as well as everything else in my life that I considered odd. The day that I was born was the first day my grandmother ever met my father. As a matter of fact, that was the day that he knocked on the door looking for my mother, is the day that she was giving birth to me. That's when my grandmother met my dad. There were signs before then. Signs like my mother actually, in her right state of mind, offered to give me to my auntie Norma. And because that was not done in writing, my mother decided when she gave birth to me that she was going to go ahead and keep me. I didn't know that then. I know that now. I wonder if my life would have been different had I been raised by my auntie Norma. I think about that a lot. But this is the life I know. And the life that I know may save another. That's how I have to look at things. I can't look at the what ifs, the what should have, what could have. This is it. Embrace it. That makes me sad sometimes to know the truth. You know, it's still something that I'm trying to get a grip of, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. What gets me is how my grandmother, for 9 months, never questioned my mother or asked her who was the father. That blows my mind. And, you know, to understand that, you have to understand our culture. And it was cultural back then that you just don't talk about people who have issues and problems. So I don't blame my grandmother. I understand why, you know, but back then I'm sure she wondered if she had done something sooner. You know, we all have that thoughts, but it still blows my mind. I remember my mom having signs from the time I was maybe like 5 or 6 years old, because she would sit with me. She was the only parent that sat with me at the cafeteria and ate lunch with me every single day. And I remember thinking to myself, well, those other kids' parents don't love them as much as my mom loves me. That's why she eats lunch with me every day. Not realizing that was a behavior and a sign that somebody should have noticed back then. That overloving trait. I also noticed that, you know, we would flip from religion. Like one day we were Muslims and the next day we were Rastafarians. And those are two very different religions. So that confused me a lot growing up when I was younger, as are we Muslims or are we Rastas today? What are we today? And then it turned into hourly. So, we're a Rasta this minute. And okay, now we're a Muslim. We're praying to Allah. And I was very confused. Very confused little girl. Very confused. But I knew that she loved me. I knew it. I could feel it. I could sense it. She loved her daughter. She sang to me every day. And she always sang conscience reggae, you know, like Jimmy Cliff and Bob Marley, that sort of music. She loved Bob Marley. She sang that all the time, had the records. You know, her health started to really decay, and it progressed when I got into middle school. And when I got into middle school, she started doing more of a disappearing act. That sometimes she'd just drop me off with my grandmother for days on end and then just come back, and then I'm back with her again, you know. By the time I got to middle school, my mother was now hearing voices in her head, and she would have a whole full-blown conversation with herself. It would be in English, mind you, but she would just have this conversation with herself. She would crack herself up. She would start laughing. She would start singing. And it's like she would have this ongoing conversation. And again, we didn't think anything of it. We just thought that she was just having an odd moment. Because remember, in the islands, mental illness was not a word that was flung around. That depression was not a word that was said. That you just don't talk about those things in the islands. You just those things are just They don't exist. Nobody ever turned to me and said, yes, your mother has depression. Your mother is a schizophrenia. No, she was just crazy. Or you're waiting for more. No, that was it. She was just crazy. And she was having her moments, and we just have to wait till she get over that. And I remember feeling as a child like, okay, how exactly you want me to get over that? How you want me to deal with that? The kids are teasing me, they're bullying me, they're calling me crazy, but I must get over the fact that my mother is crazy? Really? And these were thoughts that I had, but I couldn't express to anybody else because, God forbid, I express these thoughts, they would think I'm crazy too, even though I was already crazy because my mother was crazy. The most funny and oddest behavior that I recall my mother having, I went to a basketball game in high school, and while at the game, my mother used to follow me every day. She was like my shadow. She kept within her like a 10 or 20 feet distance, but she was my shadow. And I remember going to this basketball game for the first time ever, and she actually stopped the basketball game and took the ball and put the ball in between her legs, and then yelled out to everyone in the whole gym and said, nobody ever have sex with my daughter. And then she pointed at me, and now I laugh about it. I'm going, oh God, just the memories of hers like really tickles me now. But back then I remember thinking, oh God, I have just lost my entire social. Oh Lord, this is not going to end well at all. And I remember the whole auditorium just like turning and looking at me. And I ran home crying. I don't even remember if I just think I turned into a peacock and just hid in the bed. I was just like besides myself, like, oh my God, could this life of mine get any worse? Could it get any worse than this? That's what I was thinking. But again, who did I turn to? Who would I turn to and tell these things to about how I feel? There was no one. The day my mom had her nervous breakdown is the day that just completely just changed my life and my outlook of life forever. It started where she was arguing with my grandmother earlier in the day, and then it ended up she left me there. And then she came back and she was even more in a hostile takeover mode. And I remember being in this tug of war between her and my grandmother pulling me right and my mother's pulling me left. And I'm thinking to myself, hello, don't y'all realize I'm a human? I'm not a rope. Hello, will somebody please save me? And then finally my mother won the battle because she started hitting me in my head. And my grandmother, I guess in her mind, she thought, let me just let her go before she really does something to this child. But my grandmother started praying. And I started looking at my grandmother and getting scared, like, oh my God, something is not right. Even in my mother's weirdest times of talking to herself and dealing with herself, she's never, ever been an aggressive person. She was never like that. And she took me. She dragged me up the hill. I had like 4 bull plots in my hair, and she grabbed me by my hair and she yanked me all the way up the hill. And I remember the whole time I'm thinking, I'm gonna die. That's what I'm thinking is like, oh, just kill me now. Inside I'm thinking, I just want to die. Just kill me now. I mean, I've been through enough. Like, just kill me now. I remember thinking that. And then we went in there for the bus, and she had a sense of calm. And while in that sense of calm, I started thinking to myself, let me just think about the things that have been happening with her, and could she seriously have a problem? And in that moment I realized, yes, today's the last day you're going to live. What are you going to do? It's like a voice in my head told me, yes, you need to do something. So I started thinking of a plan of escape, and I knew that there was a McDonald's over there, one of the stops when the bus finally came. And when they stopped, I said, get off the bus. And I asked her to use the bathroom, and of course, being the protective person that I was, she came in the bathroom with me. Couldn't get away. So when we came out, it's like, I want to say that God gave me a message and told me to drop my shoe. So I took off my shoe for spite. And as she was getting on the bus, I tagged her and I said, I left my shoe. And she was like, well, go get your shoe. And I remember just running just to get away from her. And she was running behind me screaming. She was knocking people down like they were like bowling pins. Like literally, she had a strength of 1,000 men, and she was knocking. Her aim was to just, and she was yelling at me, and she was screaming, "I'm gonna kill her! Get that little girl! Grab her! I'm gonna kill her! I'm gonna kill her!" And I'm running out of shit, and I'm thinking, Lord, I'm gonna die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Even in this crazy life that I have, I just don't want to die. And then all of a sudden, I'm being picked up, and I'm thinking to myself, oh Lord, thank you, not knowing that it was some men that grabbed the back of me and pulled me into their truck and saved me. So that was the day that I was saved. But my mom was set free. Her mind was now finally free. My life changed for me after that. I don't know if I would say better or worse, because 6 months later, my grandfather passed away. And at that point, I felt like all of this, my grandfather dying, my mother and her nervous breakdown, my mother's progression, was all my fault. And everyone was going through their own something that I just didn't feel. I felt like I would be burdening everyone else if I told them what I was going through, because nobody bothered to ask, well, yes, how are you feeling? How was this with your mother making you feel? I just felt like nobody cared to know how I feel, because the main concentration was my grandmother and my mother in her mental state. That was the priority. My mom's story is one that I never ever wanted to speak about. It was something that was shameful to me. And it actually was my cousin Loanne who insisted that, yes, you have a story, that people would want to really hear your story. And I remember thinking, what about my story would anybody care to know? I mean, this story it has a happy ending, but the whole middle was jacked up, and the beginning. But who would want to even hear about this story? You know, and in a way, she saved me from my own self. She freed me. I'm free, and I'm happy. And I'm grateful. And if this story that I have saves another life and have somebody else not feeling as empty as I did, it's worth telling. Thank you.